Okay. Well, I think hopefully we can go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's 12:11. And whenever you're ready, let's have a roll call.
Mr. Egan?
I'm here.
Ms. Lasky? Here. Mr. Gentili?
Here.
Mr. Daunt? Mr. Bucker? Kaminsky? Goodman? Here.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second. I think we can just do all in favor on that
I
one,
think
can't
that's
we?
what you do. Mhm.
Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Nope. No public comment, doesn't look like. Nobody waiting online?
Nope.
Okay.
Although my Zoom just crashed, so I'm seeing that now.
Okay. All right, well, the minutes seem like a year ago, but the minutes from May 15th, were sent out, and everyone got a chance to look over them. Any changes, any complaints? Okay, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes from the May meeting?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, so now, let's start digging into 2 months of treasurer's reports. I only have 1 month of.
So.
No,
Everything's rainbows and.
Everything's good.
I think a motion to approve the rainbow.
Yeah.
So the only thing I want to say about the May one is, the AT&T that got paid for $1,061.42. Susan took a little leave. I was gone for almost 3 weeks. We are having trouble with our AT&T. They got paid while I was off. But, Gordon's trying to work on that. Our, contract with them was up, and they didn't renew it in time. So they're working on that, so we're supposed to get a credit back. I think that happened like 2 years ago. So, once we get that credit, I'll book that for the end of the year, so it'll tie it out, and then I'll have to,
Good luck with that.
fix it. Yeah, I know.
AT&T is awful.
They are very awful, so, and unfortunately, it's not this account, it's also the ones at the courthouse. 3 or 4 accounts that we're currently working on, so that's why that's a little higher, but,
We have like 3 people that just annually spend their time working with AT&T on billing credits.
yeah, we've been going round and round with them, so,
They're incredibly bad.
yeah. I had been short paying them for the last 3 months, but, yeah. But, there's another email going around saying, hey, we need to issue this credit, so hopefully this next month it gets worked out, so. But other than that, I didn't know if anybody had any questions.
For the May accounts payable, the AES in Service Inc., that cell is blank?
Oh, it's just 0, it's from the previous month, I just
Okay.
take it out, probably.
Oh, yep, sorry, okay.
No dollars in there. And then we did have that, ARFF training, but that's we'll get reimbursed back for that 5,000, so.
so we get reimbursed 2,000.
2,000, that's right, sorry. Anybody have any questions on any of it?
Well, let's take it one at a time here then. The accounts payable, do I have a motion to approve that?
Motion?
Second.
And whenever you're ready.
Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Lasky?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Kaminsky?
Yes.
Mr. Daunt? Mr. Becker?
All right.
And then I need you to approve the accounts payables for Fund 481. There was 4 items that got paid out of that fund, which goes along with those 3 items that we're tracking, so.
All right, so we need a motion for that.
Yeah.
I'll move to approve the AP for Fund 481 for May.
Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Lasky?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Kaminsky?
Yes.
Mr. Dance? Mr. Becker?
And then we have the May revenue and expenditure reports, which I did change, that this month for you guys. So it compares last year of May of 2022 to this year of May of 2023, and then it also does the, year to balance. So you can see where you're at from this time frame to last time frame, and then it gives you a change in value, but I also left so you could see your budget and where you're at percent-wise with your year-to-date budget, so.
Yeah, this is really nice.
Any questions?
I guess we thought, this is really good, I'm just curious if we know why, we seem to have a year-over-year increase in rent and landing fees and hangar rent, like generally, are we,
So the hangar rent is more this year because Hannes Air is renting
Okay.
that renter, which is $1,000 a month. So, which is different than last fiscal year for that.
And we also have more of our T hangars rented.
Yep.
Cool.
In fact, actually could have every single one rented. Matching doors to make them usable, because first time actually having a wait.
See what painting can do?
How's that blue paint? We get the roof done.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions about the, revenue expense for May? All right, I would entertain another motion.
Motion?
I'll second. Ms. Lasky?
yes?
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Kaminsky?
Yes.
Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Mr. Dance? Mr. Becker?
And then there's also the, trial balance, but that's just for you guys to review. I mean, that's really just a summary of, revenue and expenditure reports. And then there is the, the three grants, I guess, that you got from the county that, is tracking, just so you can see where you're at for end of May. That's more of a informational thing, so. Any action on that? And then moving right along, we can look at the June accounts payable. Anybody have any questions on that, on the June? We did start the PFAS investigation again, so there will be some expenses going through there, but that's a reimbursable item.
Any questions? All right, entertain the motion.
Motion that we accepted.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Kaminsky?
Yes.
Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Lasky?
Yes.
Mr. Dance? Mr. Becker?
And then, if you guys could approve the accounts payable in Fund 481, we did have two items that went through there.
Motion to approve those two items?
Second?
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Kaminsky?
Yes.
Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Lasky?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Mr. Dance? Mr. Becker?
And then we have the June revenue and expenditures, the trial balance, and then also, an updated summary of where you're at with those three grants. Anybody have any questions on the June revenue and expenditures?
For repairs and maintenance, June was, relatively low, which is awesome. Refreshing, in fact, one might say. We're of course over on that, line item to our original budget. What are of course, we don't know what we don't know at this point, but what are the things that are on your horizon or should be on our horizon for, like, do we have anything, we know we're gonna have to continue, we know we need to fix this, that's up next?
Nothing significant.
Okay.
Couple minor things that are coming up, one that came out of our airport inspection. Two that came out of our airport inspections. Costs associated with them likely fall into this system. Again, so I've been told, and I haven't yet investigated, that there's an issue for on Sears Hangar. Wait until something breaks.
Yep.
Yeah. Any other questions? Motion to accept that?
Motion to accept financials and trial balance.
Second that.
Ms. Kaminsky?
Yes.
Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Lasky?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Daunt? Mr. Becker?
Right, on to the committee reports. I don't think the executive committee has met.
No
Really, no
committees have
committees.
met.
We're gonna need that budget here pretty quick for the county.
And is that needed?
Yesterday.
I was just gonna say yesterday. Okay.
So we're gonna be discussing at the board meeting tomorrow of where we're at and things. Where we need to be.
Well, the committee is,
Excuse me.
Thank you.
yeah, Cynthia, Andrew, and me. Is there a time we need to get together and go through anything with that?
So let's just talk in general about needed committee meetings.
Yeah,
So that committee needs to meet, and then the capital projects committee needs. We met once and started a conversation about how to spend the remaining grant funds.
right,
Got some information on that, now we need to make a decision as to where.
okay,
Those two committees need to meet. And later in the agenda, under new business, we have, airport consultant RFQ. And that could be a committee set up to review the responses to the RFQ.
okay.
Could be a full board process. There would probably be interviews with consulting firms on that. So just trying to paint the picture of all of the demands on
Sure.
board members coming
Okay.
up.
So the budget.
We'll talk more about that in a bit.
Okay, well,
Just wanna
yeah.
put it on your
I'll let that
radar.
simmer for a while. So the budget committee, though, that sounds like it's a pretty urgent thing, is that right?
Yeah, so after we submit it, well, talk to the board tomorrow where we're at, then we'll be making some changes, but, we would like it soon, because I have to enter it.
Yeah.
And then, hopefully the board approves that final, like sometime in August. No later than when our September board meeting is, because it has to be finalized by then.
Okay.
And when is the county board meeting in August?
I'd have to look, but it's
Because
usually the
ours is-
third Tuesday of the
Because
month.
ours is fairly late, so I just wanna make sure that it's not one of those months where ours falls after. Ours is the 21st.
15th?
ours is the fifteenth,
No.
county.
The
The
board.
county's is the 15th, I thought it was.
Okay, and ours
About
is
middle of
The
August.
21st.
So our next opportunity to actually, for us to approve would be after it is needed, so.
So
that's not
I'm
like-
assuming that at our board meeting that we have tomorrow, we're still waiting on some stuff. Should probably come, because we're gonna be setting up a meeting for anybody that wants anything that's not in the budget to come to the board to ask. So that would be your opportunity to come to the board and say, we would like as much as appropriation, and this is why we feel we need this. If you don't do that, they're going to make the recommendation on what they can fit into their budget, so. And I can send that date when I get that date.
Okay.
So, but that'll definitely be something that you'll wanna take a look at.
Sounds like we will need
To
a
meet.
special board meeting before our next
Mhm.
regular
Mhm.
meeting.
For the budget, yeah.
At least a quorum to,
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
Something that could be approved via email, or does it have to be an in-person meeting?
Our bylaws don't allow an email meeting account.
You just need something, and put it into the packet for August for that board, and then we'll have that special meeting, budget meeting, and they might even do it that day, I'm not sure. But you definitely want to have something to present, because right now, I don't have anything
Sure.
in there when I print stuff off.
So it would be a work in process,
Right.
progress. So
Yep.
even the executive committee can put something together
Yep.
here to submit.
Right,
It doesn't have to go through the full
Right.
board yet.
Okay.
Once that's all
Right.
decided, then I would say the full board really needs to be involved. But I think
Right.
that the executive committee could certainly represent us.
yeah,
Okay,
Mhm.
all right.
My thought.
yeah.
So what you're, the two of you are then saying is that for the August county meeting, it doesn't need to be a budget approved by our board.
It can,
Yeah.
right, no, it can just
Something
be, this is what we're
submitted.
thinking, so Susan can put it in BS&A,
Okay.
and then when I present all the funds, your stuff is in there, and then when the board has that special meeting to talk about the budget, then that would be your chance to come to the board and say, hey, we're looking for this as an appropriation, and this is why. And they're either gonna say, nope, we're gonna give you this much, or they'll discuss it and get back to you, so.
That's more your
Okay.
finalization.
Right, yep. Mhm. Because if you're thinking this amount, and then they only give you that amount, then where's that middle ground gonna be?
Up with pitchforks and
Yeah. Okay, so the logistics of that then, do we have a working document to start with? Because I've never been a part of a budget committee meeting for the airport.
Neither have I.
In the past, there's been a spreadsheet that you've sent around, and then
Which
we'd all
I've
look at it as a group,
Gotten
come up with our
from
comments,
Susan
and then we
the-
would meet to discuss the comments and make
Okay.
adjustments.
It's basically last year's
Mhm.
worksheet, but then.
Yeah, I can print that out and send that to you.
Okay, so we could get that, and then we could work together and find a time where we could meet for.
It's not really beneficial to have the meeting if we haven't already reviewed that, to see
Right,
where
that's
we're
fine.
running over, because in the past years, it's been, okay, repairs and maintenance is running well over every year, we need to bump that up, or this is running under, and whatever other operational changes that Barry's got planned.
we send that worksheet out for everybody to review. Everybody can make comments and answer back, and then the executive committee can see what everybody made, put the final kind of like parameters on it to submit to the board in
You're
August.
saying executive committee, but we have a budget
A
committee.
budget committee.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so, Andrew, you have more experience with this than anyone, really, sitting here. So how much time, when we get this sent to us, how long after that should we try to get a meeting together? Days?
And not knowing exactly if you've got major plans, and I'm not part of the capital budgeting process committee this year, so I don't know what major developments, if any, you have
right,
in changes in operations. If it's standard, I would say, once you get it, if you have time that evening, it should only take an hour or two to go through it and make comments,
Okay.
and then schedule something, whatever
So,
availability is.
I'll say, and I'm assuming it's not that big a deal to get me that spreadsheet. I can turn it around within 24 hours with kind of my first draft of numbers.
Okay.
So today's Monday, I'd say we can have something to the committee by Wednesday,
Okay.
and so time after that.
Because your September board meeting is when you will have to finalize your budget, because it has to be finalized by September 30th, so.
Major salary changes or wage increases or benefit changes you see coming?
Don't see anything.
That capital projects committee, that's been primarily through that grant. We haven't done anything
Right.
much.
And that would be my
Yeah.
response to that question is,
Right.
I mean, we've got enough work in the next year of finishing spending those funds, but I don't think, I'm not aware of anything.
And if you're buying new trucks or new equipment, then hopefully your repairs and maintenance go down,
Mhm.
because now you're replacing some of that older stuff,
Right.
so we can plan for that in next year's budget accordingly.
Yeah. That's the plan, huh?
So the employees here are hired under,
Beach aviation.
I'm the only salary on the contract.
talked about increases, like, are there, like, living increases tied into the contract, or?
There's nothing built into the contract. I'm doing a year-to-year contract because costs have been so unpredictable.
Sure.
I would anticipate ask for something
Right.
along those lines, but
Mhm.
high as it was last year.
All right, so budget committee, the next few days, you'll get that document, we can work out a time to get together. All right, now the capital committee, capital projects committee. I think that we left that off looking at, slip covers or something for chairs.
chairs.
Yeah, recovering the chairs.
I can give kind of a verbal update as to where some of the projects stand, that
Okay.
have already been approved. So, since our last meeting, you'll see the painting on the T hangers was completed.
Mhm.
And I have to say that, the gentleman we contracted with that went above and beyond, because the project was only to do the panels, not the doors, because the doors eventually are gonna be replaced, so we're basically painting something. But he could not do the doors, so he painted the doors just one coat, whereas everything else is two coats. Because he couldn't stand people seeing something that looked to him incomplete, even though it's what we asked for. So he went above and beyond. So the roof is currently, what they told us is end of July, early August. But they are, I guess, having the buyer of the roofing material that they're planning on using wants to come in and inspect the building before they, probably for warranty reasons. So,
This is Bucks, correct?
yes, Bucks is doing,
I'm just gonna give you a heads up, is that we had Bucks also. There is another, roof guy in town who will call you up and tell you that he's sending you into Better Business Bureau and the state and everything else, because Bucks does not have a license. And, so just be prepared for the harassment.
okay.
Yeah, he just is not letting go. Anywhere Bucks goes and he puts a sign out,
Follows.
those people are getting, called.
Okay.
It's ridiculous. I said, maybe you should have submitted your, bid on a timely basis, and should have been lower.
Yeah.
I have no patience for that.
Yep. So one of the things that the committee has talked about that hasn't come to the board yet is looking at, putting tile in our waiting areas to replace the faded linoleum. And we're waiting on a project estimate from Hageland on that. PK, who's doing the card readers for all of the doors, I think they are having significant turnover because our signed contract got lost. Last week when we called, they said, oh, they finally found it, and they signed it. And this was the second person that I dealt with for trying to get a contract signed, so I think they're having some turnover issues. So I don't have a date on that, but at least they acknowledge that they've got a signed contract. Chairs in the waiting areas is also another newer item. We've got information to present to the committee when it meets. And then the hangar heat, part of my report as well, that's been out there. Contractor says not to worry, because he's finishing up a big project and it'll be done before winter.
Didn't we hear that about a year ago?
A couple months at least for the last few months, so that's my update there. So, but everything with regards to the pickup, the plow, all of those items are complete.
So they have actually delivered those things?
Yes,
We have a new truck?
we have a new truck and it has now a snow plow.
Nice. Okay, cool. All right, so the Capital Projects Committee, I'll be thinking about when you want to get together on that. And, let me know, we'll contact around and, do a quick survey on that one. I think we can do that one just about any time. It doesn't sound like the Budget Committee is going to take a long time, though.
There's no major changes, it's pretty straightforward.
Perfect. So I think we're probably gonna wind up spending more time in our meetings. Okay, so that takes us to the, actual report of the airport director. There's more.
So no accidents or incidents. I just told you about the, gas and heat to the hangar, so waiting on that. Since our last meeting 2 months ago, we had our annual FAA inspection, and it went well, probably one of the better ones that I've sat through. But as always, they find a few things to complain about, and they're all minor in nature. But for example, we have access roads off of our taxiways and runways, and requirement by the FAA that you have a stop sign on those roads. So they just changed the requirements, and now the maximum height of the stop sign is 36 inches, and it used to be 48, so we have to offer all of those signs. Another item is, thank you for
Sorry.
remembering that. Another item is
There you go.
our signage on the airfield, on the taxiway and runways. The panels themselves are starting to get sun faded, so they're not a bright yellow, especially the yellow faded more. And this is something that's been growing in importance over the last few years, and all of those signs are going to be replaced soon, and that's been my answer to the inspector, is they're going to be replaced soon, so we don't want to spend money replacing stuff that's then going to be replaced in a project. But this year, it's getting to the point where we have to now put in place a maintenance plan that CFA signs off on, start replacing those that are in the worst shape, even ahead of a project that will replace all the signs themselves, so.
Now, are we responsible for that, or is the
Yes,
FAA?
that is ours.
So when they get completely changed, is that on us as well?
I mean,
Because that's a mandated change.
yes, it is a project, but all of the funding for those projects come from federal dollars.
Okay.
So. Then on the last item on this slide is something that I'm very excited about, and,
Yeah.
Mike has, talked with the gentleman, but we have interest from a gentleman to actually build a private hangar on our airfield. This is the first type of new hangar construction that's happened in 25 years here. So it's nice to see that interest, and he's been shopping around, so he looked at Ludington, he looked at Frankfurt, and basically decided to do it here. Kind of got staked out the area, if you see stakes out on 31, the area that he's looking at doing it. He's basically got a proposal put together, and this board will ultimately need to approve everything around that, since we will be basically creating a new long-term lease for the land. He will be coming to us asking for airport participation in the project. We haven't done a project like this in 25 years, and the previous ones, there wasn't airport contribution, but he's going to be asking. I've already kind of given in the background that don't expect anything, but you certainly are entitled to ask. And specifically, what he asked about is the pavement from the taxiway up to the hangar. And my research on that says that any pavement that's not part of the taxiway itself is not eligible for federal dollars.
Mhm.
So, and there's the initial cost, asking for us to contribute, but then there's the long term, so when that needs to get updated or replaced 20 years from now, it's not eligible for federal dollars to
So you mentioned that our rentals are up. There seems to be
Yes.
people renting.
Yep.
This man wants to build one,
Correct.
you know, and wants us to invest in it. You know, I think there's a lot there, like you said, but it's like, we're gonna own it if you don't, you know, it's not successful for you, or, you know, you decide you don't want to be here, or whatever. I mean, I just see a lot of ways this could go wrong. But I also see an opportunity,
Yep.
you know, to grow. On this path.
And the gentleman himself, he is the airport manager in Rice Lake, Wisconsin, so kind of knows. But he also owns a business that does maintenance for BM aircraft. So he has a business as well as, you know, managing the airport over there. So he's I'm going to use the word savvy, and that may have a negative connotation. I don't mean that way, but I mean, he's a businessman and he knows what he's doing.
He's an aviation guy.
Coming to Manistee, Michigan.
Well,
He apparently grew up in the area and is looking to retire, so he's kind of looking at where he wants to kind of spend his retirement.
I just laugh,
Yeah.
because there's several meetings I go to, everybody's like, they were originally from this area,
Yeah.
they're all coming back.
So, So that's exciting. I don't have anything specific for the board, I'm just mentioning it. It'll probably go to a committee first, for review when there's specific asks. Mike has seen, the information so far.
Yeah, I saw a proposed blueprint for the building. It's a pretty good sized building they've been
Yeah, it
talking
would
about.
be probably the biggest hangar we have. So
Yeah.
it's comparable to what Cape Air is using, it might
Mhm.
be a little bit larger.
If we don't have much experience with this, are there any peers in the industry that you, can lean on
We
for?
would generally be tapping into our consulting firm.
Oh,
to
okay,
provide us
okay.
the I's and T's to make sure that we're doing, not. Okay, I'll move on to, the basically airline performance for the last 2 months. So we'll see, I'll highlight this since it's, but the numbers for May were down from a year ago, up over 2 years ago. And the amount they're down pretty much corresponds to the fewer flights we had in May. Under Cape Air's current 2-year contract, they started their summer schedule later in May this year versus previous year. So that reduced their number of flights around 15%, which corresponds approximately to what the numbers were down. June was up significantly from a year ago, down slightly from 2 years ago. June a year ago saw a horrendous performance with 40% of their flights canceled.
Mhm.
This year, June was much better, and thus things rebounded. So that's where we see there, and lower half, you actually see the performance numbers. So for May, we had 6% canceled, June 9%, not a significant number of delays. So overall, much better numbers than has been the case. And then as you compare to a year ago, June was 46% canceled. July last year was 23%, tracking well ahead of that as well. So
Good.
Cape Air is stable and doing, I would say, relatively well. Then on airfares, things after being very high fares the last couple months have significantly come down starting in August, at least as of the snapshot. But we are still on the higher side. So Traverse City is very competitive right now and has been all summer long. I'll just point out one of the obvious ones is that the round trip to Chicago out of Traverse City is essentially the cheapest in the region. That's historically never been the case. That typically, historically, has been $500 round trip. They were making money, and the only thing I can attribute that to is the airlines really added way too much capacity to Traverse City this year, assuming that the huge banner year a year ago in Traverse City was going to continue, and has. So I think they have overcommitted capacity and thus are pressing fares. We're not that much out of line with Traverse City, but we are generally higher in most cases, slightly. Grand Rapids is,
As Muskegon.
and then
Yeah, only
Muskegon
two,
is
yeah.
definitely not competitive right now. So that's where things stand there. So this ALP update, our airport layout plan, we've been in a holding pattern for 9 months, as we were waiting review by the state on the draft. They finally got back with, their review comments 3 weeks ago. So now that can get incorporated and, get completed. So that's really good news. And then the other major item is our consultant selection, and I will talk about more of that under new business. Under Cape Air specifically, in addition to what I've already mentioned, I had my monthly call with Andrew Bonney this morning. Next month will be his 3-month update for the board. So he and I confirmed the date on that for next month, so it will need to be added to the agenda for next month. But basically going through the things that concern us are, they seem to be stable on their pilot capacity right now, so that is good. The transition of their Midwest region to basically being Manistee only is kind of winding down. St. Louis will be shutting down August 1st, so then all ties into kind of had for the last 3 years will end, but they've been ramping up maintenance here, and things in general have been going fairly well on that, which also then their numbers and their performance that I talked about earlier. Industry-wide trends, something that he brought to my attention that I wasn't aware of, is that at the federal level, the FAA gets reauthorized for basically spending in programs generally every 4 years. Sometimes continuing resolutions can make that 4 years, 8 years, but the next reauthorization bill for the FAA is boiling in Congress. And the current version in committee in the House has a couple things that are significant for essential air service. One being a required 5% community contribution. For us right now, about $200,000 a year if we wanted to continue air service. And then the other are, I don't know if these are in the current language or not, but I have heard about them, are constraints that if a community is within so many miles of any airport that has jet service, they are ineligible, and Traverse City being our distance, generally those constraints would apply to us. So there is movement afoot to do things that could make it difficult or eliminate our air service. So something to keep an eye on and involved in once the processes start producing final bills. So again, some of those things I had heard about, others Andrew brought to my attention this morning, so I'm mentioning it to the board. That's basically the extent of our call this morning, and on to my last slide. Last thing here is just a quick marketing update. We traditionally have scaled back our marketing in the summer. Given how Cape Air is doing this year, we might reevaluate that next year. But so there's not a lot been going on, it's been kind of status quo. We do have new, I wouldn't say new brochures, but we have inserts for our existing brochures that basically will reflect the new gate assignment for Cape Air down in Chicago that has changed. And once you print something, then what's the best way of handling that? So we're going to do an insert. Changes for the website on that front have been done, and we're still waiting on adjusting the information that's on our video. And that's all I have for my report. Are there any questions? Back to you, Mike.
All right, let's move on to the, old business. Manistee Township, I think that's been on the agenda before, hasn't it?
So, I'm trying to think, the last time I updated the board with the missing meeting last month, but, so I attended a couple of township planning meetings and presented the information I had as it relates to airport zoning. And then contacted my state contact, and as a result of that last contact, basically got the state to give me something, written response in email that basically confirms what I was telling them, and gave that information to them, and I've heard nothing. But the challenge is that what state law says and what an MDOT has corroborated based on what I've been telling is very challenging for our community to deal with, because it says that new zoning should place significant restrictions out that direction. And, you know, reading about the medical care facility, that building should not be allowed to change its square foot shape based on what should be in place for zoning.
It's not going to. That's a whole part.
But I know, you know, so, I mean, the hospital is potentially impacted in future development. So.
That's not gonna happen either.
Yeah.
I'm just being honest.
But
I understand what you're saying.
So the planning commission at the township is really for the first time interested in, I shouldn't say for the first time, but they are the most pro-development they've been in years. And I'm bringing now a message that says, but there should be constraints. And but at this point, I feel I've done my part in communicating the message and getting the state to corroborate, I'm not pronouncing the word right, what I've been saying, and I'm basically going to leave it to them, and if something comes up with it, but that's where things stand right now.
Pretty sure this township isn't on board with our offering of a planning department. I don't think the planning department is running, they have their own. Because if it was our people, there'd be no way they would let that township keep moving.
So that's my update there. So I don't intend to take this any farther with them. I feel they have the information, and it's up to them to either follow it or to ignore it.
I think our intention was just to have it in writing that we had done our due diligence. And so if something comes up, then we can say, well, back in 2023, we said thus, so, okay.
So the developers and the people who build in the area where they're not supposed to be, and eventually that all hits the fan,
Yeah.
we won't be totally in the lawsuit.
Sure.
The township will be
Yeah.
in the lawsuit.
Perfect.
So I say that's where I leave you now. My intention would be, as there are public hearings for things, I will probably attend those and mention, because developers may not be getting the full picture, but again,
You know, I'm gonna mention this to the Economic Development and Chamber. I'm meeting with Stacy this week sometime, but it's like, you know, as you guys bring developers in, you're gonna make sure that this township, is given the accurate information. You know, there's a couple things I wanna do around here.
Aren't the developers responsible or accountable of having architects and designers to give them that information?
And it seems like they would kind of know this stuff, but as far as, I mean, for us, here at the, airport, it's like whatever information we can give them and show that we've done it, is one thing. It'll be up to the developers, and if I, like this property right across the street, you know, there are lots of people circling around that for building and, you know, housing and all that different stuff, and I just keep thinking, man, something happens, you know, the developer will be sued, the township will be sued, and we'll be sitting here going, oh, we told you not to do it.
The tribe was still looking at the Muskegon property, the architects and the people we were working with, they brought forth all the, I guess it's the Muskegon Airport right down there.
Mhm.
They brought forth all the requirements, gave us all the reports, and said, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do.
Interesting township out here.
So is it no matter what the zoning says for the township, it's still theoretically be incumbent upon the developer, whomever, to understand, like, what
I think you would imagine.
I mean,
What
you've got
supersedes what you're saying.
state law, which says the township is supposed to do things, and they either do or don't. And then, but I mean, ultimately, the developer, they're looking at what their legal exposure is. So they're gonna look at that whole chain up to see.
I think you're right, you know, it is really up to them, but it's like, for economic development in the chamber that we as a county are purchasing, you know, just not even bring someone to this location and have them invest all that time and effort on, you know, because Manistee County has a terrible reputation with developers. We haven't been in the past developer friendly. And so putting them in a place where, you know, it's gonna blow up anyways, it's just kind of business for us. I'm aware of that.
LEO coverage,
I don't
Anything new on
have an
that?
update on that.
okay. And the bylaws, I know we haven't had any meetings on that. We need to put together a bylaws committee, because we really don't have an official committee of that, do we?
I think what we talked about is, Barry, you were gonna come up with some
Right.
recommendations, and then,
That's been
Mhm.
sitting in my
Yeah,
court on that.
Yeah, 'cause
So,
we-
no, we do not need a committee for
yeah.
that.
And then the runway extension plans, is that part of that document that you're ready to pounce on
well,
me with over there,
so,
but?
yeah, so, what I so, we can skip that, and I'll touch on
Okay.
it, because
All right,
it is intimately tied to this.
gotcha.
So every 5 years, the FAA requires that, all airports, redo a request for qualifications and reselect, a consulting firm to represent them. So our 5 years has now been up, and the state has basically a format to go through for the posting of that. Realistically, there's a limited number of firms that engage in that, especially at a regional level. There is also kind of an unwritten rule that, the firms will contact the airport and ask, is this real, or are you just going through the motions? And I told them when they asked, this is real, because we've now essentially been with the same firm for 50 years. It significantly changed 10 years ago when, Bob Peckham, the former principal there, basically retired and basically merged his firm with Prina Newhoff. So history is there, but, different 10 years ago. And Newhoff has changed over in the last couple of years. Bob Nelson, who was our principal consultant for basically the entire time, now works at Traverse City Airport. Stephanie Green, who basically wrote much of our ALP, is now with a competing firm. So people we've worked with have now moved on, and they don't have good people, but they've been trying to figure out how to support their existing clients with changes in resources. They've always had a Traverse City office, and they really don't anymore. They say they intend to, but again, if you don't have staffing to staff it. So it seems like it's a good opportunity to actually put some effort into making a real look at what the options are. And as a board, we did this 2 cycles ago, 10 years ago, when that Peckham was getting absorbed into Prina Newhoff. It seemed like a logical time to do that. So at that time, we went through the same process, and we brought in 2 firms and basically did interviews with them. So this time around, we got 3 responses, and these are essentially the 3 firms that are representing, our style of airports. I mean, there are more firms that will get involved in a Grand Rapids or a Detroit Metro, but for dealing with kind of the day-to-day stuff of a small airport like us, these are really the 3 firms. So we've got Prina Newhoff, our existing, Mead and Hunt, and then CNS companies. And so the next step is we need to have a plan as to how we want to evaluate these. I would have sent the proposals to you over the weekend, but I made the mistake of asking for hard copy or electronic copy, and one firm only gave me hard copy.
Right.
And he said he would get it to me this morning, so once I have that, I can then submit all the proposals to everybody. But the question is, how does the board want to pursue the evaluation?
So was there an outline they had to follow with expectations for the outcome?
Or
Like an RFP type of? So do you, silly one, like, mission statement. Okay, so the mission statement's in there, 2 points. Just,
So no, so
so the
this
proposals are all
process-
different.
well, so this is specifically following what the FAA guidance is.
Okay.
So this
Alright.
is a request for qualifications.
Mm-hmm.
So all we can do in choosing somebody is to choose them based on whether they can do the job.
The qualifications that we wrote out or have per FAA, so there's your scoring sheet.
So yes, we have not put together a scoring sheet, but it is that request for qualifications. We cannot in this process ask what their rates are.
Mm-hmm.
It is purely about their qualifications to do the job.
Did you have a scoring sheet 5 years ago when you did this? or no?
No, we did not.
What you're saying, like, what are the different qualifications they had to
Yeah.
comment to?
According to the FAA?
Yeah, so let's
Yeah. Did they
summarize
meet that
it, yeah.
or not, point to
The-
each one?
So what I'll say on that is, all 3 of these firms can do an excellent job.
Mm-hmm.
I work with them at every conference, I know airports that are served by them. The question is, will they do a good job for us in our circumstances? So the question I have is, how does the board wish to basically narrow us from 3 down to 1?
So just-
Last time, we did this, it was an interview process, and I believe it was the full board, that interview process. I'm not sure that makes sense. I think maybe a committee, to do interviews might make more sense. And then bring back a recommendation to the board for approval. Just given everyone's time and challenging it is to get full board scheduled for things outside or even for our regular meetings.
So there's actually an objective, model that we can use, a checklist that we can go down, and it's not so subjective. Yeah, I think I like these guys, I like these folks.
There really isn't. What the request is a template that the state gives us. Basically, it asks, certain things, but then it basically says, for basically the projects we have envisioned or planning in the next 5-6 years. So again, for this next 5-year cycle, so we basically list out every project. So some of those projects tap into requirements that are different. A runway project requires different expertise or skills than a terminal project. We happen to have pretty much everything on our list right now because we're planning major runway projects, as well as possibly looking at terminal upgrades because there is potentially funding available for that right now.
What's our timeline?
It's whatever we want to do to make the right decision, but wrapping this up by the end of the fiscal year, so that we could be hit the ground running for next fiscal year, with projects and a consultant driving those would be ideal, so August, September.
Well, I might be wrong, but for me, I would like to see, of course, the documents themselves.
Yep.
And, but if we could also see what led to those documents. You were saying
Yep, I
that,
can-
you know,
Yep,
Yeah.
I can apply all
and then
of
we
that.
can kind of work it out in our minds, then we can get together and, decide how to go from there. But that would be a full board, approval of that, so.
I mean, ultimately,
Ultimately,
the full
yes.
board needs to make the selection. What process we take to get from here to there is really for the board.
Is our process gonna be audited by the FAA?
We have to document the process,
Okay.
but
Sure. Okay. So, when that comes out, still thinking about the timing of the thing here. So that would come out about the same time we get the budget document coming out. And,
which is why I mentioned earlier
Yeah.
that there are a lot of things that are gonna be requiring board or sub
Yeah, over the
board
next
participation
month or
over
so.
the next, yeah.
And let's say, in a perfect world, we have chosen one of those three by September, by October,
By September,
by September.
or,
So we have,
I would say fiscal year starts October 1st, so it'd
Okay,
be nice to
meeting.
have, at the September meeting, a board decision.
okay. Okay, the first thing then, unless somebody else has a better idea, just get those documents out to us so we can start reading through. Because right now, I'm just kind of guessing at what's in that pile right there.
Well,
And,
once you choose, sorry, Mike, once you choose one of these, then I'm assuming there's a contract or something that then has to come back for a review and approval?
Yes.
So that also has to be done by October 1st?
No, I mean, the nature of these relationships is contracts are fairly standard. The state reviews them to make across airports. That's where the state gets involved in making sure that we're, competitive with what others are charging across things. There's a lot of services that we get from our consultants that are basically non-billable. So, I mean, the nature of supporting small airports, they get paid when they do projects, but there is a constant stream of needs that an airport has that are really outside of those contracts for services that they provide us. So once we've made a selection, we'd start working together, and those things, you know, like we already talked about the question earlier about, you know, who guides us on doing a private hangar. Our consultant does. It's not a billable project. It's just they do kind of day-to-day answering questions, guidance on stuff.
What an interesting space for a consulting firm to be in. Like, the nature of the space is all kinds of non-billable support.
Yes.
Wow.
That's the nature of a small airport, and
Yeah.
so the rates we get charged when it does come to a project tend to be a little bit higher.
Okay.
Because they just know that that's
Yeah.
baked into what they're being asked to do.
Yep, that makes sense.
Right, so I guess we're just waiting to see the documents then, so that's our next action. So I think
Okay.
I think we're pretty much done with that until we actually see what's in the book. Anybody else? All right, and that brings us down to, comments by authority members.
Well, actually, I do have a question. Do you foresee creating a committee be done by the full board?
Until I see what's in there, I think that probably the full board. I think
Okay.
having another committee go through that might be an unnecessary step.
Okay.
Now, when we get into it, if it looks like, oh, yeah, then we need to talk about it, but
I'm kind of
I
in the
just don't
same
know
boat.
what's
You're
in there.
leaning towards full board.
I'm leaning towards
Okay,
full board,
that-
yeah, because ultimately we have to do it that way anyhow.
Okay. Okay.
Comments?
It would be nice to see that township thing, understanding there still may be things you might do. It'll be nice to see that fall off the agenda.
Yeah.
I think it's been there, honestly, as long as I
Yeah,
can
for a long
remember.
time,
Yeah.
Is
All
there
right.
any new news on the PFAS testing and remediation or any of that?
So, as Susan mentioned during the financial reports, we're just starting a new grant cycle on that. So, earlier this year, the board approved the next grant for that, so they're doing more testing. The short answer is that, so, if we go back in time, the first step was to prevent new contamination. So we got this $40,000 cart that allows us to meet our testing requirements without dispensing the product into the environment. That was $40,000. Now we've spent probably $300,000, this latest grant, it'll be probably $500,000 to test. You kind of see the trajectory. Then there's ultimately, well, what happens to everything we found? And at this point, no one is stating how that's going to be funded, what the requirements are going to be. But if you follow the trajectory, if testing costs this much, remediation is probably going to be more expensive. And right now, there's no one that's saying who's going to pay for that. So that's where things stand. So Eagle each year has been able to manage to get more funds for testing. Their position as an organization is, well, we're assuming that everything is going to need to get cleaned up at some point. But
The only reason I bring it up, and I'll have to go back and find, I was reading an article on vacation, and there was I don't know where, somewhere in Michigan, an insurance company is already in the courts trying to avoid, their obligation to cover for PFAS contamination.
Yeah, Michigan has a serious problem with PFAS, one of the hirings of all the states. So I think the state has to deal with this.
I I think that's a little bit mischaracterization because Michigan is on the forefront of testing and researching the issue.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore,
Mm.
we
We're
know
finding
more about what our exposure is in Michigan
Sure.
than pretty much any other state.
Yeah, because we're looking at it.
'Cause we're looking for it.
Yeah.
I don't think what's been found is outside the realms of what will be found everywhere else once people start looking for it. It
Point.
really is a federal issue because it's still not outlawed at the federal level.
Right.
It's still not listed as, I mean, there are things working through EPA right now that will, and, you know, potentially will take the pendulum from, oh, it's a harmless chemical to, oh my God, it's the worst in the world, all in one fell swoop, but associated with that, there has to then be funding to how to address it, because you can't say, oh, it's harmless, and use it and do all those things, and then the next day say, no, it's not, and now you've got billions of dollars of liability.
And I imagine major companies that have been using that and selling their product are fearful that the government would do that because then they're gonna be hit.
I mean, the biggest is
Political thing.
3M, and they've been working on getting essentially blanket immunity through cooperation, because, you know, again, depending on how that goes,
Opiate
Pockets
companies
not.
didn't get blanket immunity.
There's a pretty big
But-
case
but
down in
the-
Muskegon right now. I forget the company, but they're in a big, squabble down there. And, it's
Yeah.
a pretty big deal going on.
I mean,
Exactly,
Millions of
when
dollars.
did you know this was not good?
Right.
yes,
So what if we have a fire?
we are obligated to use this product.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, we, right now, according to FAA Federal, we are obligated to have this
Yeah.
and to use it for its intended purpose.
Mhm.
So airports are basically making the claim. The only reason we have any exposure is because we've been required to
Right.
legally do it. So,
Right.
yes, we know about it, but we're also required, so. And airport cases tend to be very, very isolated, which is why this funding has been flowing, because it's easy. Industrial uses become much, much more complex, and don't have that same, well, there's a requirement, it's like, oh, there wasn't.
Yeah.
So, it's gonna get messy.
And at some point, we change over to a different system, though, but that involves a whole nother grant cycle of cleaning out
So-
our truck and everything.
Yes.
And disposing of what's in it now, and.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
And they are making progress on that front, but the first step is identifying a product, and there now is a replacement identified product, although all the people in kind of the firefighting space say it's not nearly as effective, but it's approved, but it's not compatible one-on-one for replacement, so there's potentially equipment changes, there's disposal, there's decontamination, and who's, the question right now everyone's asking is, well, who's paying for all that? And the answer is, don't know.
well, on that happy thought, does anyone have anything else? Then I would, entertain a motion to adjourn. Everyone in favor?
Make that motion.
Yeah.